Today we are here with Pastor Ricks, Mr. Gavin Ricks. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
Not a problem. Glad you're here. Always good to see you, buddy.
Oh, always, indeed.
All right. Well, first things first, I got to do it to you. Let's bring up that Super Bowl real quick. You already know who won that. Who won that? That's right. That's
I
right. Who won
mean,
that?
they won first team to win a Super Bowl in their home stadium. So
There you
yeah,
go. And that's all that matters. So, recap it to me, man. What happened? Everyone thought y'all were the super team.
yeah. I think I can speak from an unbiased opinion. I'm gonna try to at least, but I'm a Chiefs fan. You know through and through. But I can objectively say that I think it. I think it showed that you can be the best team in the league, but if you don't play like it when the time matters, then I mean you see the results of that. They're Super Bowl favorites for a reason, kind of Super Bowl favorites from the get go to run it back. And they kind of proved that all the way up until, when it really mattered the most. So I think that was just like a good thing that happened. Not excusing our O line injuries, but a lot of people were dropping the ball, a lot of receivers dropping the ball. And like I said, defense didn't, play too well either. So, like I said, it's just basically a fact of if you don't play well on the night that happens, you'll get embarrassed and, anyone can be better than you. So,
Well, that's one way to put it, that's for sure. So, how do you explain going from everyone thought you were probably going to put up at least 30 points, 35 points maybe, and everyone thought Travis Kelsey and Tyreek Hill were going to go off on us again. So, what exactly did you see throughout the game that kind of summarized just how ineffective, for lack of better terms, that they really were in accordance to your 3 and 4 and 5 receivers?
yes. So, like I said, I think that three offensive linemen, JPP, Vita Vea, Shaq Barrett, they all had, I think they blitzed like twice the whole entire night, but it was that front four that really just created that pressure every single snap. I feel like they were back there before he even got the ball for the most part on a lot of things. But like I said, not blaming it on, Pat, because I feel like he was running for his life the whole entire time and he's still making these throws out of it. But like I said, receivers were just dropping the ball. You have, Tyreek dropped a touchdown. Kelsey dropped a really big third down conversion. Darren Williams is dropping, balls. I think B. Cole Harmon would be another option. You know, I think y'all sent a corner blitz. It was a corner blitz, and it's like, okay, right there. And then he throws the ball. He's not even looking at the ball. I'm like, just a lot of miscommunication, probably a lot of nerves happening. But all in all, that's kind of what I kind of blame it on. We don't have a lot, with them having that front four and playing cover two really gave them an advantage, and the DBs played really well as well. So
I think so too. I think that's quite a way to recover from getting, 203 yards thrown right on top of your head in a quarter.
yeah, oh no, they definitely, I think they used that as motivation. I think that was like, I mean, we didn't know it at the time, but everything that we did do that first game, it kind of came back to bite us, especially with Winfield, putting the two-piece on Tyreek at the end, where it's like, and like they asked him after the game, like, well, he backflipped on me into the end zone, like I had to do something, So I think, it came back to bite us in the end.
My absolute biggest question is, what did you think was going to happen? Did you think he was just going to let it go?
I'm not mad at him. Not mad at him at all.
Mad respect. He plays so much like his pops used to, man. I used to love watching his pops play too. His pops played against Brady, so it's
Yeah.
kind of cool to watch his son be the one that plays with Brady.
hmm
Speaking of, Brady did end up winning MVP through 3 touchdowns, but not really the stat line that you think of for an MVP, though. He threw
Oh no,
201
absolutely.
yards.
Yeah. Who do you think? If you do have someone that should have went to, who do you think it should have went to?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I think Devin White should have won MVP just for his lights out performance. And I mean, did have that game sealing interception at the end. Uh, any one of our defensive linemen honestly could have won it. JPP could have won it. Shaq Barrett could have won it. Winfield could have won it, honestly. But
Yeah,
I'm by no means. I'm very glad that Brady was the one that did end up winning it. It kind of puts the exclamation point on the season and showed exactly, just reminded everybody who Tom Brady is. That's the way I look
yeah,
at it. So, you know,
yeah.
as
I
a
think I think if I think if Darren White comes up with that one interception on 4th and 9, the one that went through his hands and hit our
yep,
receiver in the face, I think if he catches that, maybe he wins it. Because
yeah, if he
two
has two
picks,
interceptions instead of just one,
yeah,
maybe. But either way, I mean, it was from my perspective. This is 18 years coming, so it's been a long hard road. It's been a long 12 years of losing, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute of it. Same thing. I'm gonna say the same thing that Mike Evans said, man. Mike Evans said, "I knew once we got Tom that we had a shot. Did I think it was going to be year one? I'd be lying to you if I said I did. But man, it happened in year one, and Brady proved everything he needed to, and now our guys got a taste of winning. So I'm excited about that. I'm very happy about that.
yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, you got a what was it 7-9 team, who has all this talent, and the defense wasn't the greatest, but it was definitely emerging, that year coming into it. It was like, all right, like they might be a little scary. And then you get all these other free agents like, Leonard Fournette, you get, Gronk come out of retirement from Brady. I
hmm
mean, he's not the same Gronk he was, but an average Gronk is better than most tight ends in the league right now, So I mean,
I'll tell you one thing. One of the biggest surprises that I had seen is that Gronk was actually running routes even faster this year than he had been in previous years. So
it's
I
because he
think that
lost a lot of
retirement
weight
did
too.
him. I think not necessarily. He didn't come in exactly slim. He's still big, but he was actually came in. He was in great shape. He came in ready to work, and I'm not gonna lie. I figured with a full tight end room, I didn't know how that was gonna work, man. With OJ Howard being there, Cameron Brate's already established number two, and I didn't know how it was gonna work.
Will end up working out pretty well. OJ Howard goes down with an injury, so it's like, all right.
Yep. So we obviously have a lot of free agents that we got to sign. That's the next thing, celebration, everything, the parade. Brady kind of chunking the trophy across the water, and
Yeah.
Chris Godwin getting his phone knocked in the water. It's good stuff. Good to see. I hope that he found his replacement phone. Um, so on our list of free agents, we have Chris Godwin, we have Ndamukong Suh, Shaq Barrett, Levante David, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, and possibly deciding what to do with Cameron Brate if Gronk chooses to come back. So we got to wait to see what Gronk decides.
Mhm.
So with that being said, if you were to look at this team and how they could possibly make a repeat, what do you think is going to be that critical component that we need to do to re-sign all these guys?
Critical component to sign everybody, or who do I think is the most valuable and most important?
Well, you know what? Let's start with that one. Who do you think is the most valuable that we probably should go after first?
Chris Godwin, for sure. He kind of takes the attention away from, it's kind of like that trio. You have Mike Evans, Godwin, and then, Cameron Bray and or Gronk. I think those are the three options that you guys have. And then, underrated Scotty Miller, who will make a play here and there. I think that's kind of like, he kind of takes the pressure away from, Mike being the number one. I think that's the most like valuable one that you need.
That is a fast little white boy.
Very.
So, what do you think is going to happen with Antonio Brown? Just curious.
I mean, it's funny because it's two stories on y'all team. You have LaShawn McCoy, who's won back-to-back Super Bowls and never played a snap in either one of them, and then you have Antonio Brown, who did everything wrong and then won a Super Bowl. So it's like, I don't think y'all necessarily need him, but I think he'd have to take a pay cut to come back, just with all the free agency that you all have. I think that's the biggest thing.
From
especially with
what
the
I've
salary cap
been
going lower this year.
from what I've been hearing and what I've been reading is that it's looking like Mike Evans is going to restructure his contract again, which I mean I already have mad respect for him as a player. He's my favorite receiver, and to do that, to see, and Shaq Barrett says it's time to cash in. If you ask me, I think you might want to rethink how you do that. Strictly because we are good on cap space. I think we could possibly get everybody back, but I think if you want to run it back, you kind of have to think about maybe lowering it down a little bit. It's not to say that we wouldn't do it with somebody else, but we if we have to, we have to because there's a lot of key pieces that we're trying to get back here.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out what Shaq Barrett said. In his words, he said, "I'm trying to break the bank." So, you know, he was under the franchise tag this year. So if he gets franchised again this year, he's guaranteed a contract somewhere after this next year.
Right.
My thing is that it kind of sucks because like I think when he got that franchise tag put on him, he was coming off of a season where he led the league in sacks. Now where I think he had 7 or 8 sacks this year,
I believe he had 9.5.
something like that. But obviously, something very far from what it used to be. Um, I think the biggest thing here is, do you pay him or do you let him go to keep everybody else? I mean, I think you guys need that as the centerpiece. But my only concern is, he's sitting. I mean, granted, he deserves it. He's undrafted. And come in and lead the league in sacks. Like I'd want to break the bank as well. I
Oh
think
yeah,
you just need to be a little careful with that. I think that's what scares me for you guys. Is like, all right, like even my Pat Mahomes there, I'm like, oh, that is so much money. Like,
absolutely.
it is structured, to be team friendly, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest worry for you guys in that free agency.
Well, let's flip the script. Let's go to your free agency. Right now, it's looking like your your upper management might be thinking about cutting one of your tackles, if not maybe both of them, if it comes down to the cap space.
Yeah.
So,
I'm really at loss. I'm really lost right now just because one, we have, a left tackle who was a number one overall pick in 2013, who is a great left tackle, but nothing like what we all thought he was going to be coming out of
right,
the draft. We thought he was just going to be, this, premier caliber, kind of like, Tyron Smith or something like that. He's obviously not that, but he's definitely a solid tackle. And then you have Mitchell Schwartz on the right side, who's arguably one of the best right tackles in football. And when you look at those, you have one who's coming off of an Achilles injury, who's probably not even going to be able to play next season, if not halfway through it. And then you have Mitchell Schwartz, who's got a back injury that's kept him out since week 5. So at that point, they're both kind of getting up there in age while having some major injuries. You got an Achilles where, that can do it for a lot of people, just some notable Chiefs players. We have Eric Berry and Derek Johnson, who, they had maybe 1 year, 2 years after that max. And then you have, Mitchell Schwartz with a back injury where, you're a lineman, like you're using your back every single play where, he might decide, I don't even want to play anymore. So if I had to choose the lesser of two evils, I'd probably pick Mitchell Schwartz just because he's had more time to rest. But an Achilles injury that usually does it for a career in most situations. So
right. And then, of course, you also have to think how do you fix the run game? That's not to say that your running backs can't do it, but of course, when it comes to being able to run the ball, that's not exactly your strong suit. Do you say that it's because of the run game itself, it's the running backs, or is it still just a matter of the offensive line play?
I don't think it's too much of the offensive line because, granted, I was really excited for the run game at the beginning of the year because we had what's his name? Well, similarly, we got an offensive guard, and he was a great lineman, and he gets hurt week 3, and I'm like, oh, like, well, there goes that, and now we're back to square one. But I also think it's definitely like Andy Reid not committing to the run. If Andy Reid is going to throw it around the yard, and that's what it's going to do. I think the one game that we kind of showed our run game and, we're disciplined, and it was Bills, and the first time they played the Bills, that was like the one time. But then again, they had the worst rush defense in the NFL. As opposed to getting better to it, I think we need Darrell Williams, for example. He's not, a fast, back. He's a between the tackles kind of back. We need something like that starting, and then a change of pace back, kind of in there. I think that's what would fix a lot of it. Like when we had Kareem Hunt, the run game was awesome. It was amazing. And our run offensive line and run grade was not the best, but we had someone who was, full steam ahead kind of thing. I think that's the major thing we have right there to fix the run game is to really just get that between the tackles back and then incorporate the change of pace back without starting them, if that makes any sense.
Right. Okay. So, in looking at that and you brought up Kareem Hunt, and Tampa Bay might be letting Leonard Fournette go, and Leonard Fournette is one of those. I'm not really sure what type of running back I'd describe him as, but he has came out and said that he doesn't want to be a part of the two-back system very long. Do you think that Tampa Bay gets him back, or do you think they let him walk?
I think they let him walk, honestly. While he was the starter in the Super Bowl, I think they're, still true to Ronald Jones. Because Ronald Jones is, I think he's a solid, one back. I think they were definitely fighting over it with injuries and whatnot. But, Ronald Jones is still a really good back. So I think if, push comes to shove, they let him go, honestly.
Okay.
And it's kind of at Leonard's loss at this point because I think, he has a championship already. Now it's time to make money for him. He's about to come into his first contract after that rookie year, so he might be one to kick it because they don't want to pay him that much.
Okay. Let's transition. Let's talk quarterbacks now.
Okay.
Big news coming out. Carson Wentz got traded to Indianapolis. Your thoughts?
Man, I mean, I love Carson. I think I loved him since he was his rookie year. We went 11-2 before tearing his ACL. Um, you know, I always thought he was good, and you can also attribute his success to him being a rookie, and rookies having that first year. Kind of like Lamar, he kind of took a step back this year. That first year you're kind of good, but that second year where everyone knows what you're going to do and your tendencies, can start to sit in. And now we're in was it year 4 now? So year 4, and I love him, but he'll make some great passes, and then he'll make some very dumb passes. Like I'm not even the quarterback, and I know not to make those passes, but I feel for him. I think his confidence is just a little rocked. I think going to Indianapolis with his old OC that he had when he went 11-2, I think that's going to help major. But I definitely think this is his last shot. I mean, at this point in your career, like people have doubted you. You got signed to a contract early, which probably shouldn't have happened, but you got signed to that money. So at this point, it's all about you got to go out there and show it now. Because I mean.
Right. And see, I've been telling everybody, and nobody was believing me. I told everyone, keep your eye on Indianapolis. If Philly doesn't want to keep him, he's going to go with his old OC. He's going to go with a familiar face. He's not just going to end up anywhere, and there's not just anybody that's going to go get him. And I was right. I really was.
More the fact that they gave him away too. I mean, like a 4th round pick and a conventional 2nd round pick. So
I
mean,
think that was something like that.
So I mean, just practically gave him away, man. I think the coach probably should have asked for more, honestly. Just because they're getting, I think it's like $30 million in dead cap space. So
I think so, something around that number. And I've enjoyed watching Carson Wentz play. I think his biggest issue has been he's just been too rattled. It just hasn't been consistent play. It's not to say that he can't do it, but there's also something about being a quarterback where when your coach doesn't believe in you, then your confidence rattles. You start to get shaky. You start to question everything, and you're not on top of your game because you don't have that support from the coaching staff. And I think it's really important for you to have. And now that he's back with Frank Reich, I think he gets that back. I think he returns to form. to that near MVP. I still say he should have won MVP that year. But I think he gets back to about as close to that form as he can get. I'm also thinking, maybe Indianapolis repeats, maybe 11-5. They probably, if all goes right, all goes according to plan, they'll probably make the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, that's the scary thing about the Colts anyway, because they were a quarterback away from doing damage. I feel like the AFC is really on the rise. You have, was it Lamar? You have Baker, who's starting to, actually, show some form. You have Pat Mahomes. You have Josh Allen, who took giant leaps this season, and
Oh,
then you
yeah.
have the Colts, where like I said, they're a quarterback away from being actual contenders for the Super Bowl. I mean, their defense is amazing, and we all knew Phillip Rivers was out the door at that point. So I mean, they kind of got thrown into the fire with that Andrew Luck retirement a couple of years ago. But
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're like I said, they're a quarterback away from actually making a statement. So I think if Carson can really put a stamp on this year, the AFC would be a terrible place to play just because they got so many good quarterbacks out there. That's what I think personally. So
Very much so. Now, moving on, Drew Brees has yet to make his announcement on whether he'll return or he'll retire. A lot of speculation going on right now, but also Drew Brees being the fiery competitor that he is, maybe he comes back. What do we think?
I want him to retire, just me personally. I mean, I think we saw that. I mean, he had 10 broken ribs, and this, that,
11.
and that, 11. And I mean, at that point, I'm like, Drew, you made your money. You won a Super Bowl for the team. Got gypped out of a trip to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. But no, man, I think his body. I think his body is just like not. It's not matching his competitiveness, if that makes sense. He's getting
Yeah.
old, man. I think he gets hit more than Tom Brady, and that's how Tom Brady's kind of like pursuing more. But I mean, Drew Brees gets hit a lot. So,
It's interesting you say that too, because Drew Brees has one of the quickest releases in football. Like by far one of the quickest releases in football, and still gets hit more times than most other quarterbacks do. And granted, he's older, can't move as well, but the man can move no less. And we've seen it happen on a number of occasions. And Drew Brees is not one to shy away from contact either. But there just comes that point when you got to realize that you are, in your 40s, and you did just break 11 ribs and collapse a lung. There's not very many 20-something-year-olds or even 30-year-olds that come back from something like that at all, never mind in the same season that you just did it in.
exactly. I think it's time for him to hang it up. Me personally, I think that he's got a great career. I think Brady's going to end up taking all the touchdowns and the yards for sure because he's still playing. But I mean, I think he has nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, I think that one year, what did you say, 3 years ago when they were playing the Rams, I think they possibly could have beat the Patriots in that. I think they possibly could have. If the Chiefs would have made it, if not for D Ward offside, I think they may have lose that game. But hey, we'll never know. But
No, we
I
will
think
not.
oh my goodness, I think like I said, I think that was probably their last legitimate shot. I think they're always going to get to that divisional round, but anything past that, we're not looking too shabby. Because let's not forget the NFC is still. I mean, it definitely took a step down this year, but the NFC is no stepping stone. You gotta work to get through that. So
Oh, yeah, that's very true. Especially with Matthew Stafford going to the Rams. If you ask me, I think that's about as high a step up as he'll ever be able to take. So now it's kind of on him now.
yeah, I think so as well. I mean, he actually has more weapons. You got Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, um, and just an organization that essentially cares about you. Like the Lions organization has been known to just put good superstars away early, like Barry Sanders and Megatron. So I think him getting out of that organization when he did was like kind of like it wins his last shot. You're not too old. I think he's 32 now. So I mean, you got a shot to go out there and or he's 32 or 35. I'm not sure, but
That's quite a difference between the two.
yeah,
He's
it is.
32.
32. Okay, 32. anyway, but like I said, he still got some. I think he has a couple prime years left in him. So it's time to go out there and just prove everybody wrong. I think he definitely gets overlooked. He's one of the better quarterbacks that needs respect, but it's like, when your team is not doing well, you're never really looked at as a quarterback. You're based off of the team performance. So,
Exactly. That's one of the things when it comes to who was he going to go to after it was mutually agreed upon that himself and the Lions organization would part ways. Rumor came out that he said, "Do not trade me to New England." Once he found out that Matt Patricia was going back to New England.
mm,
Now he's neither confirmed nor denied this. So if that doesn't speak volumes into your head, I don't know what will.
oh no, absolutely, absolutely. So, do you think that was like the best destination for him? And if not, then give me the destination you thought he was going to go to.
I'm not gonna lie. Do I think it was the best? No, it definitely was not. The hot spot for any quarterback on market right now is going to be San Francisco. The reason for that is their receiving core is young. They are up and coming, but they are full of playmakers. Relative, unknown or unknown, they all can do it. And if there's one thing that Kyle Shanahan has proved through all of his blunders in the Super Bowl, you know, it's that he's definitely a quarterback guru and a true offensive mind and very much chip off the old block. And, his dad Mike was very much a very great offensive mind. He put together great schemes, won some Super Bowls, and Kyle is no different. And I think if there's any way to maximize a potential is to put any quarterback that's, not 40 years old and can actually move a little bit into a system like that to where they actually have a chance to blossom. It exposes their abilities a little bit better. So
No,
if Matthew Stafford doesn't end up there, and as much as I love Jimmy, dude, I love Jimmy G. I love Garoppolo very much, man. I've always thought of him as, a guy, if you give him a chance, he'll show you something. But no one's giving him a chance and everyone's writing him off. But, you know, if there's anybody that should go and take that spot, I think that's where Deshaun Watson should try to go.
I wouldn't mind if he'd be out the AFC. I mean, I think wherever Deshaun goes, I mean, people that are a quarterback away, I think that's just a really good spot. Me personally, looking at Stafford, I mean, I was leaning towards the 49ers, but I was thinking like, okay, who instantly becomes a contender regardless? I was thinking, the Colts before Carson. I was thinking the Colts and, probably a pick that wasn't on a lot of people's mind, the Broncos. I mean, the Broncos have a good young receiving core as well, and their defense has always been great. I think their red zone defense was number one in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. And, I think the Broncos, you get Matthew Stafford with some of those receivers, I think that's, Super Bowl contender, and obviously the Colts. But those are kind of my two other options that I would have like. Okay, that probably would have been the better fit or perfect fit, if you will. So
The only reason I can't say the Broncos is really like a hot spot, so to speak, for any of these, quarterbacks that are on the market or even the ones coming in the draft is because while they do have a very young receiving core, they don't really have the strongest of O lines. And as great a quarterback as John Elway was, he has not been the greatest GM in the world since he got that job.
I mean, it's hard to find quarterbacks. I think we all know that. It's hard to find a quarterback. It's hard to find that franchise QB. How many number ones have we or top picks have we seen quarterbacks that don't translate into that too many to count. It's hard.
Well, it very much is. There's no denying that. But as a great John Gruden once said, right after trading away Khalil Mack, it's very hard to find premier pass rushers in this league. You don't make moves like that and make statements like that.
Yeah.
So John Elway, his biggest move was, of course, bringing in Peyton Manning. Unfortunately, that was the undoing of Tim Tebow's career, and I figured, like some other people have that I've talked with, is that if you would have given him a chance to learn under somebody like Peyton Manning, or even whenever he was in preseason with the Patriots, if you let a guy like that everyone was curious about coming out of college, he's obviously an NCAA legend. if you would just let him learn under somebody that's been there, done that, that are legends at the highest level and the most highly regarded at that position, you never know what could happen. But they didn't they didn't let Tim Tebow develop under Peyton Manning, and they didn't develop anybody after Peyton Manning.
Yeah, I always feel like he got snubbed of his NFL career just because, I mean, he won a playoff game, an epic playoff game, if I will say. It was a great game to watch. And, I mean, that just showed, like, the leadership that he had to, like, kind of like Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes had to just will their team to victory. Um, Obviously, Patrick Mahomes couldn't do it last in the Super Bowl, but it shows like in the lights of Riders, you can make something out of nothing, and just like when your teammates see you being positive and making them great. I think that's what makes a great quarterback, and Tom Brady is the epitome of that. So I feel like he definitely got snubbed out of that, and it just sucks that Peyton Manning came, and basically everyone gave up on him. I mean, I feel like I'm not gonna say he belonged in the league, but like you never know what could have happened.
Of course, Tim Tebow actually recently just announcing his retirement from baseball, so now it's onto a full-time commentating career possibly. And he's very good at that
Yeah,
business as well.
yeah, I think he belongs there. I mean, he's like I said, baseball. I didn't hear too much from baseball. I heard him hit a couple of home runs in the Double A, but I mean, other than that, he wasn't a great athlete, but not a great athlete to go professional in both sports like a Dion or somebody like that. But
To be fair, Michael Jordan played both sports and he only made Double A. Tim Tebow got up to Triple A. Let that sink in. Okay, well, let's talk about the quarterbacks in the draft. Trevor
uh,
Lawrence, obviously being the highly touted prospect that he is, just recently underwent surgery on his non-throwing shoulder, his left shoulder. And it's this type of prospect that makes me wonder, for as good as everyone thinks that he is he merely just a prospect of the system that he was in? Or is he going to come out and shine bright for whichever organization picks him?
from what I've seen from him watching his games in college, I think he comes in and shines in the NFL. That's my personal preference. If we're looking at system, I think that's Justin Fields the whole way. I don't think you can look back in the last 10 years and find a quarterback from Ohio State that did good. In the NFL.
You got me there.
We got what Cardell Jones. We have Dwayne Haskins. We have I like I think Ohio State is a system QB thing. Like, but and even looking at Justin Fields, there were many times where I'm looking and he's just staring down receivers. I'm like, oh my goodness, like go through your options. So while he is a great quarterback, I think he's got a lot of growing to do. He could definitely be great in the NFL with some work, but I think Trevor Lawrence is like, a lot of people are comparing him to Peyton Manning, just transcendent when he came out and just like now he is surrounded by, talent. You got Travis Etienne, you go to Clemson, you have all these, studs around you. But all in all, I still think he does well in the NFL.
Now, the other big question regarding Trevor Lawrence is, do you think that he goes to Jacksonville, or do you think he pulls the Eli and tries to get to a team that maybe he feels suits him a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville is, I think they're down to their third quarterback at this point. You had Gardner Minshew, you got Nick Foles, and you go back to Minshew, and now he's bad, and then they replaced him during the season. And it's like, oh man, like, and the receiving core isn't very appealing,
By no stretch of the imagination.
by no stretch, it's not appealing at all. I wouldn't be mad if he pulled a Eli, honestly. We're talking about a career, that he's trying to make money in, and especially long term. And those first 3 years are important. And if you're set up for failure within those first 3 years, I don't blame you.
And now you look at going back to call it even 2015, whenever Jameis got drafted, you look at the last couple of number one overall picks and how they've panned out, especially the quarterbacks. I actually think all of them have been quarterbacks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so we got
Yeah.
Murray,
So you had
Baker. Yeah.
Jameis was in 15.
Mhm.
Jared Goff was 16. 2017. Hmm,
Not too sure, but
I don't remember who 17 was, but 18 was Baker. 19 was Kyler. And then last year being Joe Burrow. If you just take a look at the quarterbacks and how they've panned out in their time, Jameis being maybe getting re signed by the Saints, but being a turnover machine. Jared Goff being, in my opinion, not much better. Um, Baker having a lot of questions surrounding him as to whether he's, just questioning his decision making and his turnovers that he had in his first year and most of his second. And Joe Burrow having a promising year, but cut short by injury. How do you think that type of thing plays factor into whether or not Trevor Lawrence is going to go number one, given that he is having injury history? Maybe not a turnover machine, but also having shown so bright in his first season at Clemson versus not as bright in his last season at Clemson.
well, I mean it. I mean he was a phenom since he was in high school. So I mean we're talking to like someone who's been in the light, all his life, and I feel like the only thing that he has is falling short of the expectations that people have for him. While I do think they're high, I think he can meet them. I think it's something that he's able to do once he gets in here. Granted, if he has a great team or a decent team around him, I think Joe Burrow it was phenomenal, but the Cincinnati, I mean, it was bad. I mean, you know, offense was bad, defense was bad. It was just really not a good like situation to come into. We could very well see the same thing out of him as well. There's only so much you can do as a quarterback. While you're responsible, that you can't control, the offensive line and who's got a free rush right at your face kind of thing. But I think I think we could see that. I still think he shines wherever he goes though. I mean, you don't see that every day. I feel like me personally.
So how do you think he pairs with Urban Meyer?
Well, we've shown that colleges, college systems that are implemented in the NFL have, a couple years and then they kind of, go back down to college, as a triple option, like when Kaepernick was in here, I think everybody was using it at some point in time, but
Everybody in 1 year.
man, it was bad, man. Like, but I think Urban Meyer making that transition from college to it's hard. I mean, granted, I'm not saying Cliff was the greatest coach here at Texas Tech, but you've seen how he's kind of struggled. It's hard. It's a different kind of atmosphere, a different kind of coaching. So, but I think he can do it better than Cliff did. I will say that. So.
So what do you think is the biggest difference between getting these college coaches to come to the NFL versus letting someone like Andy Reid, who just has fun with his offense? Everyone is, it's wacky, it's goofy, it's very risque, but it seems to work. So what is the difference between the college coaches coming in versus the NFL coaches that have been here doing things a different way?
Man, I think it's just in college, you have what you do, like Navy runs the triple option, the wishbone, if you will, and like when Kingsbury was at Tech, he had the air raid offense. I think when you make that step up to the NFL, you know, I think people are scouting you different. They're gonna know your tendencies and whatnot. And I think that's the biggest adjustment. And if he can make that adjustment and not become one dimensional, or be an offensive guru like Andy Reid and have so many dimensions, it's hard to defend around because he's definitely one dimensional in passing. But, be able to be one dimensional to a point where you're so unique, I think, he can do it. I don't think he has that talent to be one dimensional and be unique like an Andy Reid, or a good offensive coach, but I think he can do it.
Okay. And lastly, let's figure out, where does JJ Watt go?
Well, he's already made his money. He's already did his time in Houston. Um, Looking at cap space, the Browns. I mean, he said he had interest in the Browns. You know, they're losing 1 to 2 D linemen if they do sign him, but that's like a contender right there. I mean, everyone wants the idea of Pittsburgh, but you got to look at that offense. I take Baker's offense over Big Ben and Juju, and that offense where they're throwing slants the entire game. I'd go with Baker if that was the case. But,
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I'm thinking, this is very far fetched. This is very much a fan theory, if you will, is if Tampa Bay can't figure out this thing with Shaq Barrett, I say if JJ Watt wants a ring, he'll sign with Tampa Bay.
honestly, it's not the if Shaq Barrett gets let go, it wouldn't be the worst option. It's still a step down, nonetheless, but it's still. I think that's a good thing.
Just given JJ's history, his injury history, I don't think that his production has slipped as bad as the numbers say that it has. He's very much still someone you got to focus on. If you let your guard down on him even a little bit, he's still JJ Watt.
Yeah, which is why I say that's perfect for him because I think on that D line aside from Shaq Barrett, I mean no, JPP wasn't just this relentless pass rusher that he was. Dominican Sue, Vita Vea, they weren't. They're Dominican Sue's a little older. Vita Vea is just like that big guy in the middle that can push a pile back. But I think they were all like just above average, and no one kind of stood out from the other, and that's what made them so great. Is that you if you shift, you got someone 1-on-1 who's probably going to win. I think that was the biggest thing. So I think that's a perfect fit, honestly.
Well, I'm glad somebody agrees with me on that.
I mean, if when you look at it, I mean, you can't like JPP is going to be the one-on-one. Shaq Barrett's going to win a one-on-one. It just depends, and like I said, whichever way you slide the line, you're always gonna, have someone on the other end, and then you also have Vita Vea and Nakamura Suda are always pushing you back. I think that's what made them successful in the playoffs this year. AKA Green Bay and Kansas City. So, and it is what it is. I think that's what happens.
All right, Pastor, we appreciate your time here today.
No doubt, man. I enjoy being on here and just conversating with you, man.
It's always a good time. Well, we'll go ahead and let you get. Next
Yeah.
time, maybe you'll have a little bit more respect whenever you try to bet against the GOAT.
Listen, if Mahomes would have won that game. Now, before we get off, can I admit you? Can I have my loser's crutch? Can I have my loser's crutch right now?
You may
Can
go
you
ahead.
admit to me that, granted, they didn't win this time, but Chiefs had completed one of the hardest schedules in the NFL this year.
You want me to admit that to you?
Okay, you want me to explain it? Okay,
Okay,
we
yeah, go
had
ahead.
one of the hardest road schedules. We had the Ravens, we had the Bills on the road, we had Tampa on the road. Just the hardest road schedule anyway. We lose one game to the Raiders, and win out all the other games, and then we go to the playoffs. We have to beat the Bills again, and then potentially had to beat the Bucks again, which didn't happen, unfortunately. But would
No,
you
it did
give to me
not.
that yeah, would you admit that they had a really, really tough schedule?
You really want me to admit that over the fact that Tampa Bay, was on a downslide before y'all came to town the first time? And y'all were our rock bottom, and then we came out and went on an 8-game winning streak.
Hey, I didn't ask you about that. I asked about the schedule.
If you want me to give that to you, I mean, I guess I can. The simple fact is it's Kansas City, and after what y'all did last year, I don't really think I can give that to you.
Oh wow.
Those are the high expectations that you guys have put upon yourselves. So when you achieve that, it's expected. It's not one of those things that's just this was so hard to do. Maybe to you guys it was, and to anybody on the outside looking in, maybe it could be, but those are the lofty expectations that you set whenever you come out of nowhere win a Super Bowl, and you are expected to come out and do it again.
Okay.
So sorry I can't give that one to you, but
I
let's
think your bias
let
is
me
slipping in a little bit, but it's
let
okay.
me reverse that. Throw my bias in there and point out we were 7-5 after losing to y'all. Went into the bye week, went 4-0 to finish out, albeit against not so great defenses, and played 3 road games to get to our home stadium, and had to beat you guys again. Or not again. Forgive me for that one, but let's just say we beat y'all for 7 out of 8 quarters that we played y'all.
I mean, that's fine. Let's also negate the fact that Tom Brady threw 3 picks in each of the playoff games, except for the Redskins. Each of the 2 games leading up to that, and very well could have lost either one of those.
Hey, if there's one guy in sports that you don't bet against,
And
what's his
I'm
name?
betting against. If Mahomes is against Brady, I'll bet against him all day.
And what happened when you did?
The one time, I think they're what 3-2
Oh,
now. They're 3-2 now. Brady has 2 wins in the playoffs against him. So
yeah, I think that's all that matters. Well, once again, Pastor, we appreciate you coming on, Mr. Ricks.
no problem. It's always a pleasure, buddy.
Always.